Imagine spending your entire life building beautiful homes, only to find out that the worst one you ever built was your own. Not because someone cheated you, not because life was unfair, but because for just a little while you stopped giving your best. It sounds impossible, but that's exactly what happened. And once you hear this story, you may never look at your work, your habits, or your daily choices the same way again. In a quiet farming village lived an old carpenter. His house stood at the very end of a dusty road. The roof leaked whenever it rained. The walls were cracked, and the front door never closed properly. It looked like the kind of place people forgot. Yet everyone in the village knew his name. Years earlier, he had been the finest carpenter anyone had ever seen. Rich merchants hired him to build their homes. Village leaders trusted him with public buildings. People often said that a house built by his hands would stand for generations, which made one question impossible to ignore. If he was such a skilled builder, why was his own home falling apart? No one dared to ask, not even his two sons. Unlike their father, the brothers had little interest in hard work. They worked on a nearby farm owned by a local landlord, but they treated every day like a burden. The older brother almost always arrived late. The younger brother looked for any excuse to leave early. If the work became difficult, they slowed down. If no one was watching, they stopped completely. The landlord was patient, but even patience has limits. Every few weeks, he visited the carpenter after sunset. "I respect you," he would say, "but your sons don't respect their work. They leave jobs unfinished, waste time, and never seem to care. If they worked for someone else, they would have been dismissed long ago." The old carpenter quietly apologized every time. Then he spoke to his sons, but his words never stayed with them. By the next morning, everything was exactly the same. Until one evening, the old carpenter called both of them outside. For the first time in years, he was ready to tell them a secret that would change their lives forever. The two brothers stepped into the yard as the sun slowly disappeared behind the fields. Their mother placed 3 cups of hot tea on a small wooden table before quietly returning inside. The old carpenter remained silent for a moment. His rough hands rested on his knees, and his eyes stayed fixed on the house in front of him. Finally, he spoke. "Have either of you ever wondered why we live here?" The brothers looked around. The cracked walls, the broken roof, the old door that never closed properly. They had wondered many times, but they had never asked. "You both know I spent my life building some of the finest houses in this region," the old man continued. "People trusted me with their homes because they believed I would always do my best." The older brother nodded. Everyone in the village knew their father's reputation. "So why?" the carpenter asked softly. "Did I never build a better home for my own family?" Neither brother had an answer. The old man took a slow breath. "To understand this house, we have to go back 30 years. His voice became quieter, as if every word carried the weight of a memory he had tried to forget. "When I was younger, I loved my work. Every house I built felt personal. I measured every piece of wood with care. I checked every wall twice. I wanted every family to feel safe inside the homes I built." He smiled for a brief moment. "Those were good years. But after more than 25 years, my body was tired. My hands ached every morning. My knees hurt whenever I climbed a ladder. Even my eyesight wasn't what it used to be. So I decided it was time to retire." The brothers listened without saying a word. "I went to the contractor I had worked with for years and told him I was ready to stop. The old carpenter paused. He smiled, but before I left, he asked me for one last favor. Build just one more house, he said, one final project before you retire. I agreed. The old man lowered his head. But that was the biggest mistake of my life. The brothers exchanged a quick glance. For the first time, they could hear regret in their father's voice, and they knew the hardest part of the story was still waiting to be told. I had already made up my mind to retire, the old carpenter said quietly. My heart was no longer in the work. I kept telling myself, it's only one more house. After this, I'm done. For the first time in my life, I stopped caring about the little things that had made my work special. I chose cheaper wood instead of the best timber. I rushed my measurements. Some of the walls weren't perfectly straight. I noticed small mistakes, but instead of fixing them, I told myself they didn't matter. Nobody will notice, I thought. Each day, I found another shortcut. I finished the job faster than I ever had before. When the house was complete, it looked beautiful from the outside. Fresh paint covered the walls. The windows sparkled in the sunlight. Anyone walking past would have called it a fine home, but I knew the truth. Behind those walls were weak beams. Behind that paint were careless mistakes. It was the only house I had ever built without pride. The old carpenter fell silent. Only the sound of the evening wind filled the yard. After a long pause, he continued. When the contractor came to inspect the house, I expected him to point out every mistake. But he didn't. He slowly walked through every room. He looked at the walls. He opened every window. He stood quietly for a moment. Then he smiled. I thought I had gotten away with it, the old man admitted. I believed nobody would ever discover how carelessly I had built that house. The brothers leaned forward without realizing it. Their father's voice became almost a whisper. Then the contractor reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small key and placed it in my hand. You've worked honestly for me for 25 years, he said. This house is my gift to you. I built it to thank you for a lifetime of hard work. The old carpenter closed his eyes. In that moment, my heart sank. I wasn't looking at someone else's future anymore. I was looking at my own. The old carpenter looked at his sons for a long moment before speaking again. I can still remember standing there with those keys in my hand. I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to say, please don't give this house to me. Let me build another one. Let me do it the right way. But it was too late. The house was finished. Every weak beam, every crooked frame, every shortcut, they were all hidden inside those walls. He looked toward the old house where they were sitting. That house, he said quietly, is this house? The brothers froze. Suddenly, everything made sense. The leaking roof, the cracked walls, the door that never closed, the cold nights during winter. They had spent their entire lives living inside the one house their father wished he could rebuild. A tear rolled down the old carpenter's face. I wasn't punished by anyone else, he said. I was punished by my own choices. I forgot that the work we do today becomes the life we live tomorrow. He gently placed a hand on each son's shoulder. Boys, you think you're only working for the landlord? You think that when you waste time or leave a job unfinished, you're only hurting his business. He slowly shook his head. No. Every day you choose the easy path, you're shaping your own future. The habits you're building today will become the life you live tomorrow. One day, just like me, you'll have to live with the results of the choices you're making right now. The brothers lowered their heads. For the first time, they weren't hearing another lecture. They were hearing a man share the greatest regret of his life. And deep inside, they knew those words were meant for them. That night, the house was unusually quiet. No one said much during dinner. The brothers lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every crack in the walls seemed different now. Every drop of water that fell through the roof reminded them of their father's story. For the first time, they understood. Their father wasn't ashamed of the old house. He was reminding them that every choice has a price. Before the sun rose the next morning, both brothers were already awake. Without being called, without making excuses, they walked to the farm together. The landlord looked up in surprise as they arrived before anyone else. "You two are early," he said. The brothers simply smiled and got to work. That day was harder than they expected. Their backs ached. Their hands became sore. More than once, they wanted to slow down. But every time they thought about giving up, they remembered their father's voice. "One day, you'll have to live inside the life you're building today." So they kept going. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. They stopped looking for the easiest job. Instead, they looked for the next one. They finished what they started. If they made a mistake, they fixed it instead of hiding it. Slowly, people began to notice. The landlord trusted them with bigger responsibilities. The workers who once laughed at them now respected them. The older brother became the person others depended on. The younger brother earned enough trust to manage a piece of land on his own. Their lives didn't change because of one conversation. They changed because they made one better choice, then another, and another. Little by little, those choices built a future they could finally be proud of. Years passed. The two brothers kept the promise they had never spoken out loud. They worked with honesty. They earned people's trust. And little by little, they saved enough money to do something they had dreamed about for years. They decided to rebuild their father's home. This time, nothing was rushed. They measured every piece of wood with care. Every wall was straight. Every beam was strong. Every door closed perfectly, just as their father had once taught them. When the house was finally finished, they invited their parents outside. The old carpenter stood quietly, looking at the home in front of him. For a long moment, he said nothing. He slowly ran his hand across the smooth wooden door. Then he stepped inside. The rooms were bright. The walls were solid. The roof was strong. It wasn't the biggest house he had ever seen, but to him, it was the most beautiful. His eyes filled with tears. Looking at his sons, he smiled and whispered, "You didn't just rebuild this house. You rebuilt the lesson I almost lost." For a moment, no one spoke. The old house had once been a reminder of regret. Now it had become a reminder that people can change. And maybe that's the most important part of this story. We all make mistakes. We all have moments when we choose the easy path instead of the right one. But our future isn't decided by yesterday. It's shaped by what we choose to do next. Every habit you build, every promise you keep, every task you finish with care becomes another brick in the life you're creating. So whatever is in front of you today, do it as if you're building something you'll one day have to live inside, because one day you will. The life you're living tomorrow is being built by the choices you make today.